If you want to start selling on US TikTok Shop as a non-US person who does not have a social security number or US passport or an ITIN, then this video is for you because last year I've done over $320,000 in sales, including $100,000 in a single month on TikTok Shop. Here's me standing next to a bunch of my inventory in China, and I documented the whole entire journey on YouTube channel, including this YouTube channel and another YouTube channel, so you can go check it out and see that it's legit. And the best part is I have done all of this with no family ties in the US and no US documents of any kind. No driver's license, no social security number, no ITIN, no US passport. Basically, I am a complete foreigner. However, along the journey of making all this money on TikTok Shop as a foreigner, I made a lot of crucial mistakes. And in fact, they had to set up and shut down 2 different shops twice, which means that I went through the whole entire process of setting up the shops, paid a US representative, opened a new company for both of the shops, so the whole process combined took 3 or 4 weeks. And I did all of that because I followed misleading guides on YouTube. So I set up all these shops just to have to shut them down. Here's a screenshot of me shutting down one of these shops. And today I'll share the right way and the only 2 right ways that I know as someone who's been doing it for multiple years now as a foreigner, and what not to do start to finish. And that is going to include how to set up a US company and which type of company to set up, which is crucial. One of the core reasons why I see a lot of people fail as beginners on TikTok Shop who are foreigners is they set up a wrong type of company. And I also fell for that mistake in the past, and that's exactly why I had to shut down the shops. I'll also explain how to find a US representative, but don't worry, it is necessary to find a US representative, but it is a lot easier than people make it out to be, and I'm going to explain exactly how to do that. And I'm going to also explain the difference between individual and corporate shops. It is very crucial that you understand this because once you make the decision and open your shop, you cannot reverse this. So it's important to understand the difference between individual and corporate shops. I'm also going to explain the tax structure so you understand what you're getting yourself into legally, explain what kind of taxes you need to pay because it's a big misconception that you don't have to pay taxes if you open a US company as a foreigner, which is a lie with TikTok Shop. No matter which company you open, you're still going to have to pay taxes. But it's important to understand before we actually get into the value that I am not a legal advisor and this is not financial advice, okay? You should do your own due diligence. I am not a legal advisor, and I'm simply going to share my experience of what worked for me and how I was able to go from $0 to $400,000 on TikTok Shop as a foreigner. But you should consult with a legal professional. And obviously, I'm going to share the experience not only that I've had, but also my students and friends that all successfully sell on TikTok Shop as foreigners. So let's begin. There are 2 methods I use personally, and I know other people that use right now successfully to sell on TikTok Shop as foreigners. And I will walk you through both of them click by click and explain everything, including the pros and the cons, so you can pick the right one for yourself. There's the usual method that I have used so far and made 400K on TikTok Shop with. And then there's the new, better method, which I'm actually now in the process of transitioning to, and a lot of people I know are. And I'm going to explain why it's better and why I'm moving there after making 400K on TikTok Shop with the first one. But before we get into that, it's important to note that, like I said earlier, you will need a US representative, but you probably already know someone. But if you don't, I'm going to tell you how you can find them and even help you find personally a US person later in this video. So don't worry, I'm going to explain everything. By the end of this video, you're basically going to know everything you need to know to set up your own shop. So method number 1, the method that I have used so far on my journey, is individual shops. So individual shops are shops that a person owns under their own name and not as a registered business. Okay, so what this means is the person who opens the shop and uses their information when they fill out the sort of documents is the one who is going to own the shop. They're going to have their tax documents tied to the TikTok Shop. The pros of this method are that it has a very, very quick setup. That is exactly why I have been using it so far. It just literally takes a few days. You don't have to have a company. That's the second pro. You don't have to have a company. You don't have to have any sort of legal structure. The person just opens the shop and then you use it for them. However, there are a few key cons that you have to be aware of. Number 1, you cannot exit the shop. And for a lot of people who own brands and want to move them to US TikTok Shop, this is going to be a big one. That's one of the core reasons why I'm moving to the second method, is that you cannot exit the shop. It's just impossible to transfer ownership. And once the shop is set up by the individual, it's set in stone and you cannot remove their information from the shop. Second con is you don't own anything. The US person who you find that will open the shop for you will technically own everything on paper. And this doesn't sit right with everyone, so I just put it in as a con. Another thing is it will be harder to find a US person. I'm going to go deeper into this later and explain how to do this for both of the methods, but it will be harder for this one because, again, they will have to attach their documents, their social security number, or personal information as the owner and the person responsible for paying taxes. So it will be more difficult here. And there's also more key man risk for the same reason, because if the person who opens the shop, God forbid, drops dead or just disappears or just stops replying, you're basically screwed. You're not going to be able to do anything. So you're basically fully relying on the person who opens the shop for you. And potential rev share is another cone because you will have to keep the shop owner around at all times. And in order to do that, the easiest setup that I have found is just giving them a percentage of the revenue that you make. I have personally had about 4 or 5% over my whole journey. So if you do the math, 4% or $400,000 generated, I personally made the shop owner about $16,000 so far in profit for them with minimal work required. And also worse cash flow because you cannot usually connect your own bank account to an individual TikTok shop, and the shop owner will have to connect theirs and then pay you out from their bank account, which is obviously going to make it worse since the money is going to first have to come to them and then they are going to be paying you out. So it's going to take longer for the money to come to your bank account. The second method is better, and it is a corporation shop, and that's the method that I'm currently moving to. So with this method, the legal entity of your business is independent from its owners, like they say right here, which means that the corporation itself owns the shop, not the shop owner. You own the shop. I mean, your corporation, and you own the corporation. And so there are a few really, really good cones which make this, in my opinion, a better method today, such as you own everything and you can exit. Because the company technically is the one that owns the shop and not the individual, you as someone who owns the company can sell the company fully, and then you're going to be able to basically exit the shop. You're going to have full compliance, and it's a lot easier to set it up because with the first method, you would have to have a very, very strict contract, a much more strict contract than the second method with the owner in order for them not to get, screwed by the IRS. With this, it's a lot easier because your company owns everything and your company's information is going to be on tax documents. But I'm going to get into that in a second. The third method is it's easier to convince a US person to become a representative for your shop because they will not have to put in any of their information on any tax documents and they will just be there as a representative. It's a lot easier to get people to say yes to that than, fully owning the shop that you will operate. Now the cons are that this usually takes a lot longer to set up because you will 100% need a company for this to work, and not just some company. You will need a very specific type of company, and I will explain which one to set up in a second here and exactly walk you through the steps to setting it up. And also you will have to pay a different type of taxes, and the filings are going to cost a little more because I personally have 2 of these corporations that you need in order to have this method, and I already filed my returns for 2025 this year, and trust me, they cost a lot more than filing for regular LLCs. And also there's a flat tax rate, so even if you make a very small amount of profit in a year, you're going to always have to pay the same flat amount, and I'm going to get into that and explain which exactly flat rate that is and how to optimize all that. So before we get into that, it's important you understand that you should not skip around and you need to learn about both of the methods. And it's very important because, like I said, you cannot reverse this decision. And maybe you're going to want to go with method 1 because, again, that has made me $400,000. Or maybe you're going to pick method 2 because that is just more compliant and you can exit that. So stick around to see exactly which method works for you better. The first method, like I said, is the individual shop route. And let me just take a closer look here what exactly this means. So on this screen where you select sort of which route you want to take, how you want to open your shop, you're going to select individual. And as a individual shop owner, you're going to need a person with a US driver's license or US passport or a social security number, a state ID, their legal name, the last 4 digits of their social security number or ITIN, and their residential address. So you will need to find a US person and they will need to provide you with this information when they're signing up. So you always have it. And obviously the biggest negative of this method is that they own everything on paper, because the shop, it's very important you understand that when you create an individual shop, the only information, this is like a blessing and a curse, because it's very easy to set it up for the same reason, because they are only asking you for this information. You don't need to have a company. You don't need to have any sort of legal structure. You just need to have a person with a social security number. That's it. So that's why it's a blessing, but it's also a curse because you can never transfer ownership And if something goes south and the person disappears, you're totally screwed because the only information that TikTok Shop has is that person's information. So if you don't have it anymore, you're screwed. So step number one is finding a US partner. I'm gonna just briefly touch on this here, but then dive deeper into this at the end of the video. But method number one, actually the one that I use to find my US partner so far that I've been working with for years now, is looking for people in Discord communities. I've been saying this to people for so long now, and I know actually a couple of other people who found a US partner on Discord servers like Ecom Sharks, which is my free Discord server. There's no sort of paywall or minimal subscription. I'm going to leave a link to that in the description. You're generally just looking not necessarily for this server, but just a e-commerce server with a bunch of US people. And don't make the mistake of just going on there and just begging people to be your US partner. That is not how it works, and you're just gonna make people weirded out by you. You need to actually make friends and help people and provide value. The only way you're actually going to find a partner is not by going in there being like, hey, everyone, who's going to be my partner? It's by providing value, showing that you're a legit brand owner, showing that you actually care, trying to help people, you know, US people, maybe posting some of your wins, posting some of your brand results on Shopify, and that will attract people because at the end of the day, the partners that you find, the US representative potentially is going to benefit from working with you as well if you teach them in return, for example. That is how I found my first ever US representative. And another way is through friends and family. And the reason why I put it in here is because you likely already know someone. A lot of people think that they don't, but actually there is most likely already someone you already know, a sort of distant relative or, you know, maybe a friend from the US that you know. You should reach out to that person, but it's very important that you get it right because you only have one shot, right? If you just reach out to them and tell them, hey, help me, you know, make a TikTok shop and fill out, I just need your tax information and your social security number. They're usually going to say no, and then you screwed. You don't have that person anymore. You lost the opportunity. So you have to, you know, value that and prepare and actually have a good proposal for them. But if you still can't find anyone or need guidance, even after you've exhausted these two options, stick till the end of the video and I'll explain how to find someone. I'll dive deeper into that and I'm going to share something with you that's going to potentially help you find someone if you don't know someone already or if these methods just simply don't work for you. Step number two, after you find a US person, you need to make a good contract. And this is crucial for this method because again, the person who you partner up with will own everything. So you need to make a good contract between you and them because if you don't, the owner can run away with your money because again, their bank account is going to be connected to the TikTok shop so they can just stop paying you out. They can stop showing up when you need them for verifications, which is so bad. You really don't want this to happen. I've never had this happen to me, thankfully, but if you're scaling, you know, maybe you get 1K days, 2K days, 3K days, and then you get a violation on your TikTok shop and they ask for verification of the owner of the shop and they're just not there, you're done. That's it. You can't do anything. You have to have them around. And I'll tell you how to make a really good, robust contract that protects you and the shop owner at the end of the video so you don't fall for the mistakes that so many people fall for. Step three is US person. This is just like an overview of how it's going to work. US person signs up and gives you the keys. So you can make a shared email account. You can even have them make an account and just give you access to it. But ideally, you should be the one who owns the email address and has access to it. Then you give them the email, you tell them which password to use. They go to TikTok shop, they just simply sign up as an individual that by themselves, fully sign up. And this is how it's basically gonna look, how it has been working for me. And another person I know, a person who's done multi-seven figures on TikTok shop and Amazon as a foreigner who does this in the US. The process is basically very simple. The payouts are sent to the shop owner, then you. For this method, for the other method, you can actually connect your own bank account. And when verifications are needed, the shop owner logs in and he, you know, verifies that there's nothing wrong. He submits an ID with his social security number, something along those lines. Then he logs out. That's the only time he gets access to the shop is when you have verifications. And usually this involves also revenue share or annual or monthly fees to make it worth it for the shop owners to actually keep sending you payouts all the time. They're not going to usually do that for free. So the only right and good way that I found me and other people I know who run TikTok shops as foreigners use is giving them revenue share, like a few percent of all of the revenue that you make in order to make it worth their while. And the contract should protect both of you. So the shop owner doesn't have tax obligations because of course no one's going to step into this unless they're, you know, a complete dummy if they understand that they're attaching their information, their personal information, to the tax documents unless you clearly state in the contract, and this is something you should usually consult with an attorney about, that they're not liable to pay any taxes, or you find some sort of a workaround where like they basically give you invoices for marketing and then send you all of the revenue that they receive, something like that. It's pretty complicated, and you have to do it right. And the contract should protect both of you. You can't just cover your own ass and forget about the shop owner, because they will know that and they will just leave with your money. You have to think about both of you. Don't be selfish. And step number 4, this is optional, but I highly recommend setting up a US company and US bank account, because you will need this for the second method too, but you'll need a different type of company, and I will explain that in a second. But for this method, it's optional, and you should ideally do this for faster payouts from the shop owner, because they will get paid out to their US bank account. And if they pay you out to your local bank account that you have in your own country, usually it takes longer, which is gonna lead to worse cash flow, longer payouts. There's also going to be conversion and international fees if you just send money to your own personal bank account in your country. And it's easier to set up legally everything if you have a US company. Just a faster, smoother process to do everything if you have a US company. But again, it's optional. You don't have to do this. So I'm going to explain how I set up my US company, and I'll go over these exact steps. I actually broke it down at the end of the video and explain exactly how I do it. That's it. That's basically all you need to know in order to set up an individual shop. That's why I said it's a very smooth and quick process, and this is one of the pros of this method. Now, let's go over the method number 2, which I actually prefer these days, and I usually always tell people to do this over the first one. Because again, you can exit it, you can get money sent to your own bank account, and so on and so forth. So unlike the first method, where we select this individual route, and the seller basically owns everything, and you're selling under your own name and not as a registered business, here you will select corporation, which means the legal entity of your business is independent from its owners, which basically means, in simple English, the company owns the shop and not the representative. So the US person is just going to be someone to verify the shop, and the company that you open will be the company owns the shop. Okay? Now, so yeah, right here, this is how the application is going to look. In the business type and the business information, you fill out your company's information. And in the primary representative information, the US person is just a representative, and he doesn't have to fill out any sort of tax forms. They just go in here, they add their name, their address, their social security number, and date of birth, and proof of address document, and that's it. They can then just leave and do nothing, because the money is going to be sent to your bank account. You will be filling out the tax forms, and I'm going to get into actually how to fill them out in a second as well. And the shop owner is just going to be there to help you sign up, and then potentially get involved if you get violations and you need to prove the primary representative's identity. Now, regular LLCs will not work for this setup. It is very important to understand, like I said at the very beginning of the video, that if you just open a regular LLC, which is what I have done at first, and the mistake that I have made, you will get screwed and you're basically committing fraud. I wanted to pull up a screenshot of one of the videos that I found on YouTube that explains how to set up a US shop as a foreigner, and they literally tell you to use a regular LLC and fill out this tax document on TikTok Shop with it, but that is fraud. You cannot do that. That is illegal. You cannot use a regular LLC to do this. And here's why. When you fill out a tax form that is required for you to fill out, once you sign up on TikTok Shop, the person who fills out this form is going to be responsible for taxes. So like I said, if you set up an individual shop, the US person who opens it for you will be filling out this form. If you set up a corporate shop, however, you can use your corporation's shop. But if you use a regular LLC, you're basically certifying under penalties of perjury that you are a US citizen or US person. And if you're using a regular LLC, which is just a pass-through entity, it just reflects who you are, you're basically signing a document under penalties of perjury that you are a US person, which is a lie. It's not true. It's false. It's illegal. So you're basically committing fraud by doing that. But the reason why it's actually compliant and why it works if you have a C corporation and not just a regular LLC is that I actually pulled up an article from the IRS in here. One of the persons that the United States considers a US person is a domestic corporation. So what this means is basically if you have a corporation that's a C corporation type, it will be considered a US person on its own. So in the law, in the tax world, you basically open a new US person. You basically own a US person. Pause, that sounded bad, but you basically own a US individual, which is your corporation. And then you can fill out this tax document with your corporation's information. And then you're fully compliant. You will need to have an EIN, and you can actually get that. And I also will break that down at the end of the video. I will explain exactly how to get that. It only costs like what, $70 in here, because you will need it to fill out this form right here. But again, I'm going to walk you through this. So if anyone tells you that you can use a regular LLC in order to sign up on TikTok Shop as a foreigner, they are telling you a lie. And if you do that, you're going to commit fraud. And that is literally why I had to shut down one of these shops. I mean, two of them, because I was following that advice that I was given on YouTube, and I opened a regular LLC and filed the W-9 form and basically committed fraud by signing this document even though I wasn't a US resident. And then I instantly shut it down the moment I realized that I am literally doing illegal stuff here. So step number one is making a C corporation. Of course, after you find a US person, convince them, to help you out as a US representative. So I'm going to walk you through how to set up a C corporation at the very end of the video. I just don't want to take up too much time here. I want to actually get to the value. Once you have a US company set up that you'll be able to use to fill out this form, the second step is making a bulletproof contract with the representative. Why do you need to have a bulletproof contract, you might ask? They don't actually own the shop. It probably isn't. It doesn't matter as much as the individual shop, right? It is actually very important still, because you do need to keep the representative around for verifications, so protect yourself. So even though the corporation technically owns the shop, TikTok Shop likes to ask for verification from the shop representative sometimes in order to, make it harder for foreigners like me and you to create US TikTok shops. So you need to have a good contract that clearly states that the US representative that you hired for this or found for this basically stays around. So when the violations come, and if they do, and they most likely will, especially for new shops, they're going to be there to complete the verifications for you so you don't get shut down. And they need to trust you to give you their personal information. So they're not going to get into a partnership where it's just like, hey, give me your social security number and driver's license. I'm going to use them for whatever I want. You need to clearly state in the contract that you will not, and you are not allowed legally to use their documents for anything else. So you need to protect them and yourself. And it's very important that you think about the both of you, not just yourself, because, just don't be an asshole. Think about the both of you. Step 3 is register on TikTok Shop. Fill out the tax forms with your C corporation information, and the representative is going to sign up and verify the shop when needed. And that's it. You're done. You basically set up the shop. You now know both the individual route method and the corporation method. But before I wrap up the video, there are a few things you need to keep in mind. And I also promised you to explain how to set up a company and how to find a US representative. So, number one, you will be subject to pay taxes in the US no matter which type of company you form. So there's a thing called ECI. It's effectively connected income. And I'm going to break that down in a little bit here. Just stick with me. And don't treat TikTok Shop like Shopify. The amount of times I've seen people who are coming from the world of Shopify, like myself, sign up on TikTok Shop, and their TikTok Shop either gets instantly banned or instantly, treated with a bunch of violations to the point where they can't even sell, is ridiculous. I have personally made that mistake myself many times, and you cannot make that mistake because sometimes they permanently ban you. You're going to have to look for a completely new representative, make a new company, and go through the full process again, which is obviously something you don't want to do because it will cost you additional money. It will take a lot of additional time. You don't want to do that. So I made a free guide where I went over key mistakes you can make as a beginner, especially people coming from Shopify. Even if you're not coming from Shopify, key mistakes you can make and that will get you violations and potentially instantly banned and permanently banned. I also went over the tax liabilities and broke down exactly what kind of taxes you will be subject to. I also explained how to set up a US company and business bank account fully online, click by click. And I broke down the best methods to find and convince US people to become a representative for your TikTok shop, and how to make a bulletproof contract with that person that will save you, cover your and their asses. And I linked all of that in the free guide in the description. It's 100% free, no sort of paywall. Go check it out. I broke down all of this information in there. Thank you for watching, and I'm going to catch you guys in the next guide.